Hello everybody, and thank you for coming to another nature story time today. Today's story is really special and I'm very excited about it because today is a very special day. It is March 7th, 2026, and today a huge race, an outdoor race, starts today. I'm going to give you a couple clues and see if you can guess what it is. So it is an outdoor race. This race is sometimes called the last great race on Earth. There are animal helpers in this race. And if you need to know what animal, I'll give you another clue. This particular animal would be terrible at it, but his type of animal are very good at it. And my last clue is it takes place in Alaska. Do you know what race I'm talking about? So today is the start of the Iditarod race up in Alaska. So the ceremonial start today is in Anchorage. Tomorrow is the official start of the race in Willow, Alaska. And our story today is going to be all about the Iditarod race. Now, I want to clarify ahead of time that this is a fictional story. When I first read it, I thought it was a true story and I was so excited. I loved it so much. I still love it so much. But just know that the characters in this book are made up, but the idea around it are all based on true events. So this is something that we call realistic fiction. So this exact story didn't happen, but something like this could happen because it's based off of a real idea, a real race, a real concept. Okay? So before we get started on our book, I do want to tell you a little bit about the Iditarod. So the Iditarod is a trail in Alaska, and if you think back way long ago to like gold rush days in Alaska, so starting like back in the 1860s, people were trying to get to very remote parts of Alaska. And in those parts, they rely heavily on the rivers to get to inland Alaska from the coast. But in the fall, those rivers freeze up, so you can't use the rivers anymore. So they took inspiration from the people who had been living in that area for hundreds of years, the indigenous cultures that were up in Alaska and into Canada, who were using dog teams to move things around in the winter. So by 1910, they were creating the Iditarod Trail. So it was over 1,150 miles long, and it went from Seward, Alaska, all the way to Nome. And they were able to transport goods and cargo, freight, mail, and even sometimes people along the trail during the winter. And there were lots of little towns and villages along that trail, places where people could stop, sleep in a warm bed, get a warm meal, whatever they needed to do along the trail. So think of it as like a major highway system through Alaska at that time. Now you might be thinking, well, why didn't they use horses on that trail? Because it was so snowy and frozen, horses are really heavy animals that sink deeper into the snow. And I actually found a really interesting fact that I want to read to you while I was researching that says, pound for pound, the sled dog is the most powerful draft animal on Earth. A team of 20 dogs averaging perhaps 75 pounds each can easily match a team of horses weighing more than 2 times as much. So I did not know that dogs are our most powerful pulling animals on Earth. I thought that was pretty cool. So dogs are faster, they have longer stamina, they can eat from the land, right? They can hunt for fish or other game while they're on this trail instead of bringing grain or hay along for the horses. And they can walk on top of the snow better. So sled dogs were a really important part of Alaska for a long time, and they still are. But our planes and our snowmobiles have replaced a lot of our dog sled teams. Now, one more thing before we read our book. In 1925, there was a diphtheria outbreak in Nome, Alaska, and they really needed medicine because people were starting to die from this sickness. And the medicine was in Anchorage, Alaska. Because of the weather and they didn't have the right pilot for winter, they couldn't fly a plane. So they had to set up like a relay style race along the Iditarod to move this medicine from Anchorage to Nome. So they had 20 mushers. They traveled 700 miles in just about 6 days, which was really fast, in weather that was rarely above 40 degrees below zero, and it was blizzarding and snowing and crazy windy, like it was blowing the dogs over. So this heroic journey became a really famous use of the Iditarod Trail. Maybe you've heard some of the dogs that helped get that medicine from from Anchorage to Nome. Maybe you've heard of Togo or Balto, and there are still statues at either end that honor the work those dogs did to save so many lives. So again, just a really important part of the trail history and a big part of why they still race today, to honor the history of this trail and all that it's been used for throughout time. So in the current Iditarod, there will be teams with 16 dogs. They will travel about 1,000 miles, and there are 26 checkpoints now that they have to stop at. So they can resupply, they can get stuff there. They have vet checks there to make sure the dogs are being treated well, that they're healthy, that they're not injured to continue running. And then they have mandatory rest stops too, so people don't try to go too hard, too fast, and end up injuring themselves or their dogs. So Dallas Seavey he was the youngest musher to ever win. He won the first time at 18. He has won a total of 6 Iditarod races, and he currently holds the fastest time, which was 8 days, 11 hours, 20 minutes, and 16 seconds. So that is the time mushers this year will be trying to beat, and Dallas is not racing this year. There is somebody from Wisconsin racing though, so maybe keep an eye on Ryan Reddington. Okay, without further ado, in our hype up to the Iditarod, let's read a story about it. Our story today is Akiak, A Tale from the Iditarod, written and illustrated by Robert J. Blake. So remember, realistic fiction. This story didn't actually happen, but it's still a really good one. Right inside the front cover, we can see the map. So Nome all the way to Anchorage. They'll start down here and they're going all the way up to Nome. This red route is the northern route. And then there's also a route that goes like this. You might not be able to see it as well. That's called the southern route. And they do those, they flip between them every year. So this year it's the northern route. Next year will be the southern route, and so forth. Day 1. Akiak knew it. The other dogs knew it too. Some had run it many times, and others had never run it at all. But not a dog wanted to be left behind. It was Iditarod race day. 1,151 miles of wind, snow, and rugged trail lay ahead, from Anchorage to Nome. Akiak had led the team through 7 races and knew the trail better than any dog. She had brought them in 5th, 3rd, and 2nd, but had never won. She was 10 years old now. This was her last chance. Now, they must win. Crack! The race was underway. One by one, 58 teams took off for Nome. Day 2. Come on, old girl. Show 'em how, Mick called. Ha! Mick worked the 16-dog team through Akiak, calling ha when she needed the dogs to turn left and gee to go right. Mick was the musher, but the team followed the lead dog. The team followed Akiak. Through steep climbs and dangerous descents, icy waters and confusing trails, Akiak always found the safest and fastest way. She never got lost. Day 3. Akiak and Squinty, Big Boy and Flinty, Roscoe, and the rest of the team pounded across the snow for 3 days. The dogs were ready to break out, but Mick held them back. There was a right time, but not yet. High in the Alaskan range, they caught up to Willie Ketchum in 3rd place. It was his team that had beaten them by just 1 minute last year. Following the rules, Willie pulled over and allowed Mick's team to pass. That old dog will never make it, he laughed at Akiak across the biting wind. She'll be waiting for you at Nome, Mick vowed. Look how deep the snow is for those poor dogs. Day 4. High in the Kuskokwim Mountains, they passed tall Tim Brunzi's team and moved into second place. Just after Takotna, Mick's team made its move. They raced by Whistlin' Perry's team to take over first place. Ketchum made his move too. His team clung to Mick's like a shadow. Akiak and her team now had to break trail through deep snow. It was tough going. By the Ophir checkpoint, Akiak was limping. The deep snow had jammed up one of her paw pads and made it sore. Mick tended to her as Ketchum raced by and took first place from them. "You can't run on that paw, old girl," Mick said to her. "With a day's rest, it will heal, but the team can't wait here a day. We've got to go on without you. You'll be flown home." Roscoe took Akiak's place at the lead. Poor Akiak. Day 5. By morning, most of the other dog teams had passed through the Ophir checkpoint. The wind was building, and the pilot was in a hurry to leave. Akiak tore at the leash as the volunteer brought her to the airplane. "Get that dog in," the pilot hollered. "I want to get out of here before the storm hits." Akiak jumped and pulled and snapped. All she wanted was to get back on the trail, to run, to win. Then, all at once, the wind gusted, the plane shifted, and Akiak twisted out of the handler's grip. By the time they turned around, she was gone. Where do you think Akiak's going? Day 6. Akiak ran while the storm became a blizzard. She knew that Mick and the team were somewhere ahead of her. The wind took away the scent, and the snow took away the trail. But still, she knew the way. She ran and she ran until the blizzard became a whiteout. Then she could run no more. While Mick and the team took refuge in Galena, 7 hours ahead, Akiak burrowed into a snowdrift to wait out the storm. In the morning, the mound of snow came alive, and out pushed Akiak. Day 7. Word had gone out that Akiak was loose. Trail volunteers knew that experienced lead dog would stick to the trail. They knew she'd have to come through Unalakleet. Not sure if I said that right. She did. 6 hours after Mick and the team had left, Akiak padded softly, cautiously, into the checkpoint. Her ears alert, her wet nose sniffed the air. The team had been there. She could tell. Suddenly, cabin doors flew open. 5 volunteers fanned out and tried to grab her. Akiak zigged around their every zag and took off down the trail. "Call ahead to Shaktoolik," a man shouted. She's going to keep going. Akiak's running her own Iditarod. Day 8. At Shaktoolik, Mick dropped 2 more dogs and raced out, still 6 hours ahead of Akiak. Hungry now, it had been 2 days since she had eaten. Akiak pounded over the packed trail. For thirst, she drank out of the streams, the ice broken through by the sled teams. She struggled into Shaktoolik in the late afternoon. 3 men spotted her and chased her right into the community hall, where some mushers were sleeping. Tables overturned and coffee went flying. Then one musher opened the back door, and she escaped. "Go find them, girl," he whispered. At Koyuk, Akiak raided the musher's discard pile for food. No one came after her. At Elam, people put food out for her. Almost everybody was rooting for Akiak to catch her team. Day 9. Mick rushed into White Mountain 22 minutes behind Ketchum. Here the teams had to take an 8-hour layover to rest before the final dash for Nome. Mick dropped Big Boy and put Young Comet in his place. The team was down to 8 dogs, with 77 miles to go. Akiak pushed on. When her team left White Mountain at 6 p.m., Akiak was running through Golovin, just 2 hours behind. A crowd lined the trail to watch her run through the town. Day 10. Screaming winds threw bitter cold at the team as they fought their way along the coast. Then, halfway to a checkpoint called Safety, they came upon a maze of snowmobile tracks. The lead dogs lost the trail. Mick squinted through the snow, looking for a sign. There, going right, she recognized Ketchum's trail. "Gee," she called. "Gee, go right." But the dogs wouldn't go. They wandered about, tangling up the lines. Mick straightened them out and worked the team up the hill. At the top, they stopped short. Something was blocking the trail. What do you think it is? "Akiak!" Mick called. She ran to her usual spot at the harness, waiting to be hooked in. "Sorry, old girl," Mick hugged her. "Rules say I can't put you back in a harness. Get in the sled." But instead, Akiak circled the lead dogs, pushing them and barking. "What is it, girl?" Mick asked. Akiak ran back down the hill. Mick laughed. Ketchum's team had taken the wrong trail. She turned her team around and rushed them down to Akiak, who jumped into the sled. "Take us to Nome," Mick called to her. Mick first heard the noise a mile outside of Nome. At first, she wasn't sure what it was. It grew so loud that she couldn't hear the dogs. It was a roar or a rumble. She was so tired after 10 days of mushing she couldn't tell which. Then she saw the crowd and heard their cheers. People had come from everywhere to see the courageous dog that had run the Iditarod Trail alone. As sure as if she had been in the lead position, Akiak won the Iditarod race. Nothing was going to stop this dog from winning, Mick told the crowd. Akiak knew it. The other dogs knew it too. She got her win, finally. I'm going to read this little author's note at the end. The Iditarod is, above all, a race of the heart for both human beings and dogs. As with any race, however, the Iditarod has rules to ensure fairness and safety for the mushers and dogs. A musher must stop and sign in at each checkpoint on the trail. In addition, a musher must take a 24-hour stop at some point during the race. One 8-hour stop at the Yukon and one 8-hour stop at White Mountain. The maximum number of dogs a musher can start with is 16. A musher must finish the race with at least 5. When one team gets within 50 feet of another, the team behind has the immediate right of way upon demand. The musher ahead must stop his dogs for at least 1 minute or allow the other team to pass. An injured, sick, or fatigued dog may be dropped at a designated dog drop and flown back to Anchorage to be picked up and taken home. A drop dog may not be put back in a harness and may not run next to the team. However, a loose dog found on the trail may be put in a sled and taken to the next checkpoint. I would like to acknowledge the hard work and competence of the Iditarod Trail volunteers. Robert J. Blake. So that is our story today. I love this story. I love the Iditarod. I think it's so exciting. So I will put some resources down below. The Iditarod has a website and it has a ton of really great information on it. It also has educational resources for teachers or for parents if you want to know more or get students or kids involved. There's tons of stuff on that website. So I will put a link down below. Remember, it takes over a week to finish the Iditarod, so you could follow along. It will be in the news. You could look it up with a parent or guardian online and enjoy the race. We'll see you again soon for another story time. Bye-bye.